Welcome to this testimony interview with Patrick. And are you out there, sir?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. And I'll let you go ahead and begin however you want, and then I'll ask questions accordingly.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. My name's Patrick. I'm from Tennessee and kind of bouncing around the United States now. Not really from anywhere. Living out of my truck and camper. Um, getting work wherever I can find somebody that will use me for my services, and it's just been one mess after another, man, since this all began.
Absolutely. You said that this hasn't been going for a lot of targets have been doing this for decades, but yours just kind of started off. And would you like to go into how this began with you? I think it started with workplace harassment. Is that correct?
Well, actually, it it I was staying at in a sober living house in in the Tri-Cities area in Tennessee, and working for a painting company, and everything was going good. And um, I think the investigative phase of the program had been going on with me, like how they do for however long, where they're finding out everything about you, and they don't really let you know yet that they're following you and investigating you. And I think it got to that point where it was time to kick the door open and let let me know that this was going on, because I started noticing the following and the stuff going on around me, and then the workplace harassment. Everybody at work and everybody at the sober living house all started the little whispering tricks and games. And then when I would approach them and be like, "What's up?" And they, "Oh, nothing, man, we weren't talking about you." Just all the little games that they play to make you think that you're crazy. And um how they do. It's just
So that was you're getting direct conversation. Was it because you said that they must have been surveilling you? Uh, whoever, whatever is going on in your scenario, and then so these little whispering sessions, did it involve that personal information?
no, it was just like, for instance, at the house, we had um meetings and things we had to have. We had, you know, house meetings, and then outside meetings we had to go to and stuff. We Tons of meetings in a
Yeah, I lived
mm,
at one of those places for about a half year. Yeah.
yeah. So at these meetings, these guys, I was one of the only ones with a car at the house. So I was pretty close to all these guys. I was a little older than most all of them, and I was giving them all rides to work and stuff. So I was pretty close to all the guys there. And there was about a dozen of us in this house. And when I was alone with them, they acted like my best friend. But then when we would get in like a group setting or whatever, the little whispers, and they'd be looking at me and
Oh, okay.
bust out laughing and stuff. And then, I started uh, pulling them off one at a time, and I'd be like, "What's up? You got a problem with me, or what's going on?" And then they'd be like, "Oh no, man, why you think that?" And I'll be like, and then I would, call them out on what was going on, and they would all just deny it and say, "I don't know why you say that." Oh, okay, So just the uh, the beginning stages of, you know trying to make you think you're delusional, or seeing something, you know
So the environment changed around you, and it was obvious. it was basically obvious, but there was that plausible deniability that when you brought it up, they tried to gaslight you at that point, basically.
Yeah, they would just deny it. No, man, we got mad respect for you. That we wouldn't, you must be just thinking that, that's not the way we feel about you. But then, the very next chance they got, they would do the same thing again, and I mean, I was trying to avoid confrontation, and living in a group environment like that, you can't really have confrontation with people and stuff unless you go about it the right way, because then you'll get kicked out or whatever. So I had to try, and I didn't go to the people that were over the program. I wasn't going to snitch them out, so I just tried to handle it myself without it leading into something. So I finally just moved in with this girl, and she was involved as well. She kind of talked me into moving out of there. And then the night that I got to her house, she acted like she didn't want me there. And I was like, wow, are you serious? You've been
Wow.
talking me into leaving this place, and now I get here and she wouldn't get off the couch. She wouldn't come help me carry nothing in. She was acting like I was bothering her and all this. And I was like, oh my God, are you serious? I mean, I was really feeling like I was having a meltdown, because every area of my life was becoming affected by what was going on, and I had never experienced anything like this, and I had never heard of anybody being gang stalked or going through this kind of stuff. I never seen a YouTube video or anything about it. So I'm thinking this is all just really how life is coming at me right now. And I was tripping hard on it. And, I just couldn't believe it. So I carried my overnight bag in, and that's all at her house. I was like, I'm not even moving my stuff in if this is how you're going to act. And she was like, well, you can just bring it in tomorrow or something. And I was like, man, I just cannot believe this. So I didn't even sleep in the room with her that night. We kind of had words, and I slept on the couch. And
gosh, what a nightmare.
Yeah. So my first night out of the halfway house, and thinking, I'd even she went and got a bottle of vodka for me and a bottle of tequila for her. We were going to have a couple drinks with dinner, and she didn't, she had already eaten her dinner, and mine was on the stove when I got there, and cold. And it was just like, you just thought you were going to have a good time tonight when I got there. So, obviously they had gotten to her and already made sure that she was going to let me down in every way possible.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, let's talk about that for a minute, because this is classic. Because the way you described it, you're experiencing all this stuff. You're in between a rock and a hard place, and this woman is your friend, and she's trying to help you, and then she does the complete flip on you, but not until she's got leverage over you and you've already moved out. Right. Yeah. So, and I've that exact same thing happened to me. Exactly. Yeah. And then it was even beyond that. It's like, it's like you said, all of a sudden the abrasive, it's like a lot of targets will talk about coughing and stuff like that. But for you, it was like, complete 100% environmental flip, to where now that your dinner's cold, and yeah, come on, we're gonna do this. But it's a complete flip from what you were told, and that's what a lot of targets talk about. In fact, I think you mentioned some things involving people in church, wolves in sheep clothing. I think you got that on Facebook, and so I would imagine the same thing happens with them, doesn't it?
Yeah, she and this wasn't like the very first incident with her, because I had been seeing her for probably maybe a month and a half, 2 months. And when I would come up you know, her house was like about an hour and a half ride away from where I was staying. And I would get, you know, I would have to earn passes and weekend uh, stays away from the group home, the halfway house. So when I would get my time to go and stay up at her house, um, you know, she would have all this weird stuff going on there. I was thinking she was on meth. I was thinking that she had people hiding around the house. You know, and there were people around the house, but every time I would ask her and stuff, she would be like, no, and they had this little whistling thing. They were doing this whistling, and oh man, it was just it's so deep, it's just crazy. And she was making me think I was crazy because she was denying every bit of it. And I mean, I was wanting to believe her and everything to be true. And so I was a little bit standoffish about moving in with her when she asked me to. But I figured, what the hell, I'll trust her. And, you know, I haven't actually caught somebody at her house yet. I was noticing her doing these hand signals and stuff while we would be sitting on the couch. And I would jump up and run over to the door, jerk the door open and run out on the porch. And there wouldn't be nobody out there. So I was thinking I was crazy. And I guess that she was doing these hand signals and stuff to either the camera in the TV or a camera in the living room, a small one of some sort, that could have been hidden in something, because I painted her living room and did sheetrock work in there. So I know there wasn't one in the wall, but could have been in something, you know. But
Could have been in a device or something else. Yeah.
yeah, she really had me going. And you know, I mean, it was really making me think I was losing my mind, like I really was.
Yeah, no, I'm not. This is not my video and everything, but I just want to interject a little bit because I dealt with exactly the same thing, exactly. And
Mhm.
this girl shows up at a sober house that I was living at, and she was actually pretty inebriated when she showed up. And the first thing she did, she comes barreling in our room, and she was drunk, you know. And I was like, oh, you know, she got admitted. They let her in and everything. She had to sober up while she was there. But she comes busting in the room, and she's like, I'm bringing the cops, and laughs. And then she walks out. Well, later she, you know, calmed down and got normal and everything. And we became friends and everything. And she's like, you know, I don't know if I should be here or not. And I got a house just, you know, a few blocks from here. And I want you to come live with me. And so we started a relationship, and I did. And the same thing, same exact thing you're talking about. All of a sudden, it's just like a complete flip, and you don't know what's going on. She jumped out of my vehicle because we were getting all her stuff from Wyoming, or taking it down to Wyoming from where we were. And, you know, coming back, she jumps out of the vehicle. She was drinking. She was really drunk, and sometimes she would drink too much. And then she jumps out of the vehicle and wouldn't get back in, and she hurt herself and everything. And then she called the police, told everybody that I beat her up. So the cops were looking for me, you know?
No.
Yeah. And they caught her in the lie. But, you know, anyway, this isn't my testimony, but dude, this is exactly what you're talking about. Exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about, you know?
Yeah, there's so many stories with her. We could probably do two shows on just my relationship with her, because it got deep. You know, I mean, I had been to prison on some sale and delivery charges, so I had a little bit of parole to do, and I gave her address as my home address for the parole officers, and I think they were even involved. I think they even knew what was going on, because stuff was really weird with them as well, and not normal, you know. So I think that Department of Corrections was even involved in it, or knew about it. And you know, it's just it goes so deep, it's not even funny. And
It is. Yeah. And that's one of the dilemmas that targets deal with. It's like, you know, it's like John Wick, you're excommunicado. It's like everybody got a notification, or they're being manipulated somehow. and it's your job to try to figure it out, but your life is completely different all of a sudden. Everybody just, you can't even go to a restaurant without getting messed with. Like you said, you're trying to get jobs and stuff like that, and you're able to survive, but it's just not like it was before. And then these people are just flipping on you. It is classic. It's classic, man.
Yeah. And even after I broke it off with her and got away from her for, I think I had been out of her life for 5-6 months, and the following had started and everything, and I left my state and was bouncing across the United States. I've been from one end to the other twice in the last 6 months. And at one point I got an email. She didn't even have my phone number or anything anymore, but she knew my email address. She sent me an email, call her, and I did. And now this is 6 months roughly since I've even spoke to this girl. And she comes back into my life, and I told her, I was like, yeah, I'm living on the road, bouncing from state to state, trying to find work, and I've found out about this gang stalking thing now. It's called gang stalking, and there's other people going through it too. She said, see, I told you nobody was going to kill you. And I was like, yeah, but that's all you would say. You never would tell me there wasn't nobody there, and I'm trying to catch these people in her yard. And
oh my God.
Yeah, she would only thing she would say is nobody's going to kill you. And I would be like, well, I'm not going to lay down up here comfortably and rest knowing that there's people on the property here or in the house or whatever. So she comes back into my life through this email, and I'm on my way back east from California the first time, and I'm somewhere in the Midwest, like Wyoming, somewhere in that area. And I start talking to her as I'm headed east, and she's like, well, why don't you just come back to my house? She said, you still got your key, don't you? And I said, yeah. And she said, yeah, just come on to my house. She said, if I'm not home, go on in and make yourself at home and everything. And I said, okay. Well, we were talking, every day, morning and then at night, tell each other good night. And the closer I get to Tennessee, dude, she calls me, or she texts me one morning, good morning, hope you have a good day on the road. You should be close enough to make it within the next day or so, shouldn't you? And I answered her, and that was the last text I got from her. As I approached, I was within 100 miles of her house, and I started texting her, I'll be there soon, I'll be there soon. She wouldn't reply back.
Oh.
She ducked me, dude, and just had me thinking I had somewhere to go and I'm on my way, and all this. And then she left me cold again. So it was like she got me one last time, and I was like, wow, I can't believe I fell for it again. So
yeah, that's, and just like I said, this isn't my video, but the same thing happened. When it came time to, because the cop was like, here's what happened. So she jumped out of the vehicle and messed herself up, and then told the cops that I beat her up. Right. So they're looking for me. And I pulled into her house later because it was like right out of town where her friend lived, where she jumped out of my vehicle, did a little bit of a roll in the ditch, probably 20 miles an hour or something like that. And she ran off over to her house. And then, but later, she goes back to that other place, and I go over there and I'm like, what's going on? And she freaks out on me. So I leave the vehicle there and I just run away because she starts like trying to punch me. And then I come back in the morning thinking she's going to be asleep, dude. I'm like living in construction areas, sites and stuff like that all night, just waiting for her to go to sleep, looking to see if her light's off and everything. Finally, I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to get my vehicle out of there. And if she let the air out of the tire. And so I'm like, I'm just gonna drive out of here and air it up somewhere else. Because and so I try to get in the vehicle. She runs out and starts hitting me. And guess what? All of a sudden we hear a siren. And that cop he was looking for me all night, right? He comes around the corner to talk to her, and he sees her just wailing on me. And I'm just like, I got my back turned to the vehicle, and she's just beating the crap out of me, and I'm letting her hit me, right? And so he hits his siren, And he goes, "You lying, you know what?" Starting with a B. He goes, "So this is a big tough guy you got me looking for all night, huh?" And
Yeah.
he goes, "Come over here. Let me look at your hands, son." And I showed him. He goes, "You didn't do that, dear." And I told him what happened. I said, "She jumped out of the vehicle." And he goes, I'll tell you what, I'll press charges right now because you're an idiot if you don't do it because she ain't going to drop the charges on you."
Mm-mm.
And so she, "Oh, no, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it." And, and so because like you, I didn't, she said, you're going to live with me and everything. And so we're going to work everything out. And then when it came time for me to go back to see the judge, she was pretending like she was talking to him on the phone and all this. But she never did. And she says, "Oh, you're going to pay, you're going to go to jail." And I'm like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And when I got back, the whole thing blew up nice and fine. I went back to my hometown. I went and found another place to live. She calls me up. Same thing, what you just said. Sent me $200 to do it too, to come back up to Wyoming. And like you said, I just,
Go for it.
it's a complete flip. It's a complete flip. It's a setup. It's got to be, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, this one here, she even tried, she came back one more time. I, I got a text from her, month and a half or so ago, just out of the blue. I hadn't had any relations with her at all since, she left me, on my way to her house, quit taking my texts and stuff. And she texted me out of the blue. She said, so, she had loaned me I was doing this outside exterior on a house, and she had loaned me this Carhartt hoodie, and she said it had been her dad's or something. I don't remember, but she's like, "So you're not going to bring that hoodie back?" And something else she was wanting, and and come back to my house. Come on to the house. And I didn't even answer back. All I did was I went straight on there and blocked her number from my
Oh,
phone.
man. Oh,
I've never,
God.
I've never even answered her back. I don't want nothing to do with her in any way. So
Well, that's the weirdest thing about it, is the target is left trying to figure out, is this stuff set up spiritually, man? Or is it like some kind of program or something? Sometimes it's both. What do you think?
I don't know. See, the thing about her is she works for the mayor in the town that she lives in. So, I mean, I'm even wondering if maybe this all didn't even start with her, because she works at the court. She doesn't work at the courthouse, but she gets her paycheck at the courthouse. She's over the recycling department in the county she lives in. So, her boss is the mayor, and she's down at the courthouse and around all the the politicians and stuff of the county there all the time. So I'm not certain that she may not even be the reason that this all started on me to begin with.
Yeah, that's interesting. But so I'm not trying to pick apart your story, but as far as I know, you never did a damn thing wrong to her, right? Why would she be mad at you? I mean, you didn't do anything.
Never.
She invites you to live with her. She likes you, and then the games begin.
Yeah, and I had a key to her house, to both of her vehicles.
Wow.
I never did
That's
a
a
thing.
honeypot. That's a honeypot from hell, bro. Okay.
Yeah, I painted her living room. Did all kinds of things around the house.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And she just she was it was one pick me up to let me down after another with her on everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
She had me so fearful that I mean, I truly probably never slept with both eyes closed the entire time I was at her house, because she, I mean, she had a pool on the back side of her house, and one night she went to sleep, fell asleep early, and I kept hearing two males' voices talking, and rather than wake her up and say, "Hey man, I hear something outside," I just got out of bed and I got down on the floor and I crawled over to the window, and stuck my head to the window where I could hear good, and there was two guys sitting on the deck out by the pool, talking, and I could see the silhouettes of their bodies, and I just couldn't make out what they were talking about. And when I got up on my feet and headed into the living room to head out there, they got down off the deck, and they had, the next day I started looking around when I went out there around the pool, and they had trails wore in the foliage around on the bank in the back of her house, and stuff where they were moving around at night, and stuff whenever I would be there, they had trails
My
beat.
gosh.
Yeah, for me, it looked like rabbit trails or deer trails or something where they had been walking around and
Gee.
stuff. Yes, it was crazy. I knew there was stuff going on, and she would always deny it and play it off like I was just, paranoid or something. It
Well,
was crazy.
let me ask you this. You mentioned earlier that you were wondering if she was, methed out or whatever. And some targets will talk about how they'll become involved in people. And I've seen this too, that they kind of play around with that stuff. It's almost like there's some kind of spiritual manipulation involved. Was she doing that?
She did, and she don't. She never really to the point where I could even tell that she was doing it. But I mean, I was constantly being drug tested, of course, because I was coming up to her house from a sober living house, and
Right.
I mean, we were drug tested randomly. It could pop up randomly at any time, and we were always guaranteed one a week, and plus I was on parole as well and could get one at any time, so there was no way, which meth has never really been my thing anyway. I never was around people that used it or were doing it and stuff, so it wasn't something that I was ever really much of a
No, but a
part of.
lot here. My point is that sometimes when individuals are introduced, even if they're not even doing the substance, just to
Uh-huh.
the people that do it, it's like something that, and I'm being speculative, that is like a conduit for the spiritual dimension. It's like, it's like when you deal with individuals in the hierarchy of the secret societies, and then you find out they're doing weird sex rituals, or they've got some the thing going on that's almost like witchcraft, and you're like, wow, normally you wouldn't think that. But with meth, it seems like everybody that is playing around with that stuff, it's especially if they're in that culture, it's like they're involved in something. It's like it just lights off for targets.
Yeah, I believe that, and I believe that there's a strong spiritual presence with the spiritual, with the drug chemicals. Anyway, I've heard of I'm a born again believer in Jesus Christ, and I listen to a lot of preachers and stuff, and I've heard a message taught on pharmakia, which is the word for pharmaceuticals, I guess.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I've heard that. I think they're taking some of that out of context, my friend.
and some of
Because
that,
sorcery from the Hebrew concept, it would be more like, and I've talked about this, and I've made this. I'm not trying to interrupt you, but I got to clarify. But you're right. With meth, there is stuff like that going on within the ritual of the witchcraft. These people are involved, absolutely.
okay,
But
I see what you're saying.
yeah. So, but you got to connect the dots. So, because then pharmakia is a drug. And so now you got nicotine, you got, like wine. Jesus made water into wine. You've got Psalm 104, verse 15, where God gave man wine to make their hearts merry. Doesn't mean he wants people to get drunk. You don't want that. But the thing is that when you conflate those things together, it becomes confusing. And meth is not just pharmakia. That stuff is evil,
Oh yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just want to make that distinction, because it's like when you get into ayahuasca, when people are going into different states of consciousness and coming to a higher level of consciousness, or learning, secret wisdom from shamans, or that is pharmacy. That's what that word means. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but also when you get into meth, I mean, that stuff is completely man-made, by the way, too.
Mhm.
And it is heavily involved in every group of witchcraft individuals that I've ever met. So I think they do use that stuff. The other thing that was scary when I was around those individuals is they would try to offer that stuff to you within different things. And I had one individual admit to me that that was part of some type of spell that they were trying to do, and they would get me to do that, and there was like they would like perform a ritual around that whole thing. He admitted it. So
Wow.
he changed his mind and threw it out the window because I was being his friend. Literally. Yeah. I was drinking with him and everything, and he goes, "You know what? I'm not going to do this shit." And he walked out the door and he threw it outside. And he goes, "You're never going to find it. And I don't care what they think." And I was like, "What are you talking about, dude?" And then he told me. He told me.
Man.
Yeah. No, I'm serious. This really happened. So yes, but yeah, go ahead. Anyway.
I'm really glad that I haven't been around a lot of people that do it and make it and stuff, because Tennessee was real bad for it back, and before it started coming in from Mexico so heavy, with that shake and bake stuff and all that stuff that they were doing, where they were making it in the Mountain Dew bottles and all that. It went through a real big thing around rural Tennessee, with that meth stuff. And I'm just thankful that I never really have been around the crowd that was involved in it. But I do see what you're saying about how that stuff could definitely be linked to some rituals and stuff like that, because they can stay up for days and days and days on that stuff. And
yeah, well, it's even scarier, and this is kind of speculative. And like I said, this is not my video, but some of the people that would be involved in this whole thing, it's like normally if you get involved in a substance like that and you get addicted to it, you get really skinny, like the classic vision of the crackhead or whatever. But some of these people that I noticed that were into that witchcraft and the hierarchy of this whole thing, it was like they were normal, but they would get people to do it. It was like they were feeding on them with some kind of, I mean, I'm speculating, but they were normal. It didn't mess with them. They would do it sometimes for, months straight. And it was like, there's no way you could do that stuff like that. And it wasn't just meth. It was like, crank or whatever, amphetamines. And it's like normal, human beings can't do that without something else. And like some of the stuff that I heard from these people, that they were literally feeding on the individuals that they were getting addicted to this stuff. And it's like the stuff that targets talk about within their contracts, maybe a honeypot will get you to violate God's law or get you to do this, do that. And they do the same thing. And it's like they're literally like feeding on people. It's like they're vampires or witches or whatever. And it sounds crazy, but but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, she was kind of one of those, you couldn't tell that she even did it. She wasn't skinny. She didn't have sores all over her face.
That's a red flag right there. Yeah.
Yeah. She didn't have any, there was no telltale signs that she was like that, or was using that stuff. And, she'd lay down and go to bed at night, never any signs of not being able to sleep or.
How's that possible?
No, I'd be sitting on the edge of the couch somewhere if I did a small crumb of it,
Exactly. There's no way. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I think you were, I don't know, man. I'm not even going to say it, but it's like she drew you in, and it was like she was feeding on you. It was like a contract or something. I mean, I'm speculating. I am.
Yeah. And I don't doubt it, because, just the way everything happened with her, it was, the story goes on and on. Like I told you, we could do 2 or 3 episodes just on her, and the very various things that happen with her. It's just crazy, how I met her, how it all started out. Just, the whole thing is just crazy. Just one thing right after another of craziness. And, it was only to let me down in the end, and I found that that's a big part of this program period is anybody you become friends with or acquainted with, they like to you to have some sort of a promise or something you're working towards, and then it get yanked away, so that it doesn't come to fruition. So you get the letdown, and I don't know if it's for, to just to wreck us with that, or exactly, because I don't know all the ins and outs of this program and what they're expecting or what they're trying to accomplish and stuff yet.
No, that's important. No, you made a good illustration because, and that's all targets are, they basically become isolated because, like I said, it's like excommunicado, right? And all these people seem, even family members seem to turn against targets. And it's like, and so what, like you said, you get, they play a game though. It's not just that they flip. They draw you in and play this little game with you, and because they want you to be, like you said, traumatized and get to the point where you're not only morbid or angry or something, or maybe even mad with God or whatever, but that you just don't want to try anymore. And so, and I've talked about that with targets. It's like, you're trying to get your life back. You have this conceptual framework of interacting with the world, but all of a sudden it becomes illogical. All of a sudden people are not acting normal. They're just like, it doesn't matter what you do, where you go. And it's like, and so what you stop trying to, I don't know, expect that because it was never there. Unfortunately, to me, at least, in your circumstances, it almost seems like something spiritual, but I could be wrong. And with targets, that's the way it is. And it's like when that switch is flipped, it's like everybody. It doesn't matter who it is. They get to them somehow, some way,
Yep.
And you don't want to try anymore. And so you what I do is I just back off and wait, because they want you to react. They want you to get to the place where you just give up or you come to some kind of conclusion. And for me, I just back off and wait and wait and wait. It might be 5 years, might be 10 years. And then they'll try to draw you back in again, but you already know what they're going to do. And so you don't have to, it's like when you get gaslighted and they say, "Oh, don't you trust people anymore? Or do you lose your faith in humanity?" It's like, no, but I'm realistic. Okay. I'm realistic. Yeah. But they try to gaslight you into be thinking you're antisocial or mentally ill or something else,
Uh-huh. Yeah. The last actual time that I was actually in her presence was Christmas, a year ago Christmas. And I came to her house and surprised her. I went to her family gathering for dinner and everything. And mine was the next day, right? Okay, so I go to her family gathering, and then the next morning when we get up and it's time to get ready to go to mine, she don't want to go.
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
She left me. She left me out in the cold. She made me go by myself. So it was just everything with her was just a complete mess. I mean,
but the thing. Okay, so we know it now. Okay, both of us are looking in hindsight, but when it happens, you don't know what the hell's going on, right? It's like, whoa, and that's what targets deal with, because it's a complete conceptual framework flip, and people are all of a sudden, they're just, it's like, what's wrong with everybody, and it really freaks people out. Don't underestimate this, man. What what Patrick is talking about is intense. And
Yeah.
sometimes targets will go over the edge on this, man. This is not something to be underestimated.
And it really did have me, because like I said, I had never heard the term gang stalking or heard anyone else's story or testimony and knew nothing of it. So I'm thinking this is real reality going on right now, that none of this is staged, that there's nobody calling the shots, and this is a planned out deal against me. I'm thinking this is just really how life is unfolding for me right now, and this is some real BS. But I mean, it does make you feel a little bit better when you find out that that you weren't just taking that many bad
Sure.
hits all along, that it was planned out. I mean, it wasn't that you weren't on a roll of some bad luck that bad, because I mean, I truly was wondering if life was ever gonna become normal again, after the experiences I was going through with her. And I think as long as we have went on with this, I know that I've heard a couple of your shows with another guy or two that you've done multiple shows with him. We could just make this one about this with her, and then we could go on to some other portion of my testimony of at another time if you want to.
If that's what you want to do, can you hear me, by the way?
Sure can. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because the volume dropped. I accidentally, the phone kicked off for a second there, but everything should be fine in the recording. I'll take a look at that. Yeah, you're the captain if you want to,
Yeah.
because it's for you, this was your introduction to this nightmare, right?
This was welcome to my nightmare right here with her. Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the way it happens to a lot of targets, and it's like all of a sudden everything is just a complete bunch of nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. People say one thing and they do a completely other thing. It's like you said with those people whispering, the individuals, oh no, we like you, we're your friend, and then they're looking at you, and all of a sudden all this other stuff starts to happen. And the problem with it is, and I've talked about this before, when targets want to get their life back, it's like you said, it wasn't really there to begin with, and now you're being wakened up. You see what's going on, and that is the reality of it. And then what do you do then? That's horrifying, because now because okay, so you need to be what? You need to be at least social in some way. You can't just sit around with nothing. That's like the deprivation tank of MK Ultra, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but you need a place to live, you need a place to work, but you're getting harassed from everybody. Some targets, they can't even go out and eat because they get food tampering. And then it's just like they go live in an apartment or something, or they get a place to live. People are messing with them there, or people messing with them at work. And it's crazy. And so, but you can go at whatever angle you want. I'll just let you go because you're doing a great job so far. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I just, as far as the eating out part thing goes as well, I'm very leery about eating out myself. I've caught people behind me waving their hands or flipping their hair and communicating with the person at these fast food restaurants and stuff too many times to feel comfortable. The only way I'll do it is I don't research anything on Google before I go to it anymore. I try to make rash decisions and just bounce in there and unannounced. I don't think about it much before I go. I try to do it real quick and go to Chipotle a lot where they prepare it in front of you.
Yeah, you got to watch them do it at like a buffet or something,
or Subway where it's right in front of you.
Yeah, because otherwise, dude, but you sound nuts. People think you're crazy, and I've seen it even then, because this is the beginning of what you this is, think about, I've seen this whole thing light off years later because that stopped for me for a number of years. Let me see. It would have been 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So about 7 years that stopped. And then I started eating out again, which sounds insane. And it wasn't going on. And then all of a sudden it started with like what you're saying. And then it got more aggressive where they would forget like, the chicken patty and just give me a bun with ketchup or something, and laughing and all the serious pace. But I'm doing the same thing you're doing. I'm flipping. Well, I'll just go to a different restaurant, right? I'll just go somewhere where I'd never go. And I go there and they would be there too. And how do you explain something like that? That's not something normal. And I even it got so aggressive that I would go in when I was doing deliveries and they would be like, oh, how about we just give you some free food? I'll make you a sandwich. And they're all looking at each other laughing. I'm just there to pick up a delivery, It was, and then I couldn't eat anywhere. And it was like, wherever, it sounds nuts. It sounds crazy. And, but, it went from the sarcasm to your little comments like, well, I hope you're going to be close, to the bathroom for this one. And they would put something in there. And of course, Montezuma's Revenge would be involved, and not to be too graphic, but what is a person supposed to think at that point? I mean, you look completely crazy if you say anything, right?
You do. You can't say anything. And it's just like, you have to predetermine everything you're going to do, but even in a subtle way, because you don't want to think too hard on stuff even anymore, because, your thoughts can be, they know our thoughts. So, if you sit and dwell on something long enough and they know what you're thinking, well, then, then they're going to know, they're going to have a head start on you. It's going to be another Google thing all over again. Like I'll run in a Little Caesars and get a hot and ready every now and then because it's already prepared. It's in the oven and it's right there where you can grab it and nobody has to.
Yeah.
But it's stupid that you got to live that way, but it's true. I mean,
so have you had the break-ins or anything like that?
The only thing that I've had when I left Tennessee in August, everybody was turning against me because, I do remodeling and painting, and I was working for a family member that had a bunch of units that I was working on, and the stalking was getting heavy, and I'd come to work and I'd be just shaking my head and they'd be like, what? And I'd be like, man, I got followed home last night and I got followed to work this morning. They're sitting down here on the side of the road right now. And, oh man, you're thinking too much into this. They make a pill for that and all this stuff, and I'm like, you guys are the ones that need a pill, I'm telling you, this is really going on. And nobody wanted to hear me. So I finally got tired of it. And I packed everything up. I had bought a camper and I had saved, I had roughly $15,000 saved up and I left. And when I got to California, my camper got broken into in San Jose by the police department. I went in a Target one night to get some groceries, and when I come out, there was about 6 cars around my camper, and I was tripping out. I'm not from out there, so I was like, I didn't know nothing about gang stalking yet at this point, so I was going to go near a police station or something like that and just find a place to park. And I didn't know if I had a hit on me from a cartel or what. There was a lot of Hispanics following me out there because, there's a lot more of them out west. And so I went to the police near the police station and parked, and they had beat me to the police station already. And, so when I seen that.
Hello?
Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Are you there? Yeah.
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay. But yeah, they, the anyhow, long story short, the police broke into my camper that night in San Jose, and I was asleep in the truck, which was attached to the camper. And my truck started bucking around and moving and stuff. And I was like, what in the heck? And I looked in my rearview mirror down both sides. I didn't see nothing back there. So I got out and I walked all the way around my rig. And when I come around the back corner, the cop was standing outside the door, facing away from my camper. And I said, hey, man, did you just get out of my camper? And he said, oh, no, He said, no, I just come out here he said, I just come out here to check on you and make sure everything was all right. And I was like, are you kidding me? Because I knew he had been in my camper. So I said, are you kidding me? And he said, no. And we started talking a second. And I said, yeah, the truck was moving and stuff. And he's like, I don't know, man. He's like, it might have been the wind. And I was like, oh, okay. And his phone rang and he answered it. I just stood there and I could hear a female's voice, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. And she was talking to him and he said, yeah, well, I got about 80% of it searched. He said, but I didn't find it though. And I looked at him and I was like, you're just going to blatantly say that right in my face, that you just got about 80% of it searched and didn't find it. And, and I turned away and took about 3 or 4 steps away from him while he was talking to her and just shook my head. And when he got off the phone with her and I talked to him for a couple minutes, I got back in my truck and I got to thinking about it. I think they were looking for that money, because they thought that I had gotten it all out of the bank in cash and brought it with me, and I just brought a very small portion of cash and left the rest on my bank card, so I think they were looking for money. And he flipped, dude. When I went in my camper after he left and went back in the police department, he broke doors off my cabinets, dumped drawers out, just trashed it. He flipped it like he was looking for dope or something.
Yeah.
And, just wrecked my camper. And I kept it very tidy. I tied and taped every drawer and cabinet door down whenever I travel so they don't swing open. And, he wrecked it. And what do you do about it? Later down the road, I got mobbed in another city somewhere, and still at this point didn't know about gang stalking. So I went to the police department, and I was like, I just don't understand this. I'm being followed intensely everywhere I go. It was a state troopers department of Utah, and the lieutenant comes out, sits down with the clipboard, and he's like, he's really interested. He turns his head around, he's ready to talk. And I tell him the story and everything, and he's taking notes and all. And he's like, well, I'm going to give you some good advice. He said, the best thing to do is get in that Tundra and head back to Tennessee. And I said, yeah, I plan to. And he's like, I'll give you some routes, a good route to take to get home. He said, and, if you need to stop and do a paint job here and there on your way home, he said, do that. He said, but I would point that thing towards Tennessee and I'd get the hell out of here. He said, I was like, well, what would you do if you were being followed like me? And he was like, well, it does happen to me at times. He said, with it comes with the work, the position. And I was like, oh, really? And he said, yeah. He said, I'm a cop. I arrest people. You get people that are mad, what have you. He said, if I notice somebody following me, he said, I don't go home. And I was like, well, yeah, I feel you there. He's like, I take them on a goose chase. And he said, you can make 3 right turns and you've made a complete square or whatever, or went in and you can, if they follow you those 3 turns, he said, they're following you. And I was like, yeah. I was like, plus you got that piece on your side. He said, yeah. And I got a 12 gauge out there in my car. And I was like, yeah. I was like, well, those are, a couple good things to have. if you're being followed. But I told him about the deal in San Jose, and he was like, man, he's like, that's very unfortunate. He said, you should have, while that happened right in front of the precinct on camera, he said, that man lost his job. He said, you should have pursued that right then and there before you left that city. And, he actually seemed like he was on the right side of the law. He did, which, he could have been manipulating me, but he was at least giving me some sound advice. And, he was like, yeah, you
Well,
should have
yeah, it doesn't sound
definitely.
like he was. Yeah, he would have been coughing and playing games with you and all that other stuff.
Yeah, he didn't go into none of that. Yeah, he was like, you should have. If he broke in your camper and broke things inside the camper and everything, he said, you should have. He said that man would have lost his job for sure. And I said, yeah. So, but anyhow, it's just that was the break-in thing, and my truck gets broken into. I've been standing pumping gas in my truck, and I've got a key fob to open and close the doors. And I've been standing pumping gas, and my doors will all of a sudden lock. And I'll look around and I'll use my key fob and unlock it, and come over and look in it, look around, shut the door back, finish pumping gas, and it'll lock again on me. And I had $400 and some medicine stolen out of my truck about 2.5 weeks ago. So, that kind of stuff does happen too. You can't never be, and a real expensive pair of sunglasses that I was lucky to have given to me. I would have never been able to afford them, and they stole them out of my truck too. So,
As a target that's been dealing with this there's people out there, and I've talked about the fact that you could be at first. You're thinking these people are just, I don't know what's going on, but it's not just going to keep going, and then it does. And so, but you're in the first couple of years of this whole thing. And it's interesting to hear, how it has started for you, and how that conceptual framework flip has happened, and people have turned against you and all that stuff. And you did mention that, you speculate, we all do, that they've been, profiling you or watching you or whatever. And you did say that you were dealing with, the snickering and all that stuff at the sober house. But has anyone at this point used any direct conversation with personal information that has just been, shocking, or any of that stuff that's happened to you?
Like about the program?
Well, because in other words, targets will deal with, it's like you said, things were happening, at the group home, as an example, or at the sober house. And it's they were looking at you and laughing or whatever. That's pretty obvious.
Right.
But you did mention that, you're assuming that these people had profiled. And I'm thinking, did they use anything from your past? Has have they, because a lot of targets will deal with that type of direct conversation, will get your attention to make you aware that you are being, your past is being dug into. Maybe people are spying on you, anything like that?
Well, I was never close enough to hear any of the little inside jokes that they were using. It was
So
basically
that hadn't happened to you, like maybe in a grocery store. You said for what you said, the food tampering thing has happened already, right?
Well,
as far as their, the way they act to make you paranoid that they might do something, not that you've been poisoned or drugged.
Living on the road, and having to live in fast foods and stuff, and being followed. Yes, I've had them. If they're not in the fast food restaurant when I go in there, they're right behind me. And when the lady working the counter starts giving you them looks, when you know,
Right.
and and you sense that it's immediately, there's been times that I've stopped in the middle of my order and just walked away,
Yeah.
and not even got that, because I already know what I'm getting ready to get. Bubba's standing back there behind this big rack that I'm not going to be able to see what he's doing, with my food, and it turns my stomach. And I've thrown, chicken McNuggets away from McDonald's and stuff where, I was just certain that by just the way that the person handed them to me through the drive-through, that there's no way that this stuff has not been tampered with.
Yeah, they're obvious
Yeah,
with it because
yeah.
but you never have you had the yeah. So
Never gotten sick or anything
okay, so
off of
you haven't
anything.
got there yet. Okay, because you're
Mm-mm.
fairly new at this. Because
Mhm.
some of the targets that I've talked to and the stuff that I've experienced, to where they'll play that game and you're thinking, you're just trying to mess with my head, and then they'll go further, you know,
Mhm.
and that's where it's. But it sounds like you figured it out a little early.
Well, yeah, it's just, and I mean, I just I pay real close attention to everything. I mean, I've had the bad problem with overanalyzing and overthinking stuff long before the gang stalking stuff ever came into my life. To the point where I would get hung up on it and stuff. I mean, I sold drugs for some years, and you got to be careful and think everything out, and watch your back and the people around you. And I mean, you just learn, you just get, like a sixth sense about you, that um, you know what's going on, to keep from getting in trouble, or dealing with the wrong person or something like that. So, I mean, I've always read into stuff a little too deep, but I mean, I think that's helped me a little bit in this area, because it's allowed me to, I think, catch on to some stuff a little sooner than I probably would have if I
Well,
would have
that's
just been
that's
gullible.
interesting. So let me ask you this, because a lot of targets, at your stage, you're kind of at the beginning a little bit. And
Mhm.
so what I'm getting at is that a lot of targets will, because it sounds like you are very, I don't know, very perceptive. And the thing is not, that's not normal. So what I'm thinking, you must have had things happen to you in the past that made you a little skeptical. Okay. Am I
Oh yeah,
right or not?
yeah. I mean, I sold drugs to an undercover.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even, because, okay, so that was what you were explaining. What I'm asking
Mhm.
you is this: now that you think back, was there anything that was like almost like, because a lot of targets will talk about foreplay, at least I experienced that, where people would say things later, we're going to drive you crazy, or you're going to figure it out, soon. And you're like, what are you talking about? Did you have any of those types of things that you have experienced now that you think back at what you're dealing with now?
Um, no, not really that I can think of.
Okay. Okay.
You know, um, I just don't, and things keep coming back to me. I the timeline keeps going back a little further. I'll just be driving along sometimes, and I'll have a thought about something, and then I'll be like, oh, I'll look at it through the lenses of this now, and I'll
Right.
be like, wow, okay, now I see why that happened.
Yeah, that's
Why
what
in
I'm
the
talking
hell?
about. Exactly.
Yeah, why did I not think about that before? And yeah, I uh, once my sister, had did a few things, and she would say a couple things that were, just kind of letting me know that there was somebody else watching. Like, like she didn't want, um, she didn't want me to do this, because then they might know, and then she would look bad or whatever because she she knew him. Like, for instance, once I had to go to parole, and I knew I was going to have to take a drug test. Well, I had smoked some weed, and I was worried about the drug test, so I was trying to prepare. And I was in the kitchen getting ready. I had a little Visine bottle, and I was trying to rig me up a little thing. And she come in there on me, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I hit a joint a couple times when I went to the hockey game last night with my cousin." And she was like, "So what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm afraid I might get tested." "Oh no, uh, don't you let nobody know that I knew this." And I said, "Huh?" And she's like, "Oh," and she sighed real big, and she put her hands on her hips, and she walked away. And I could tell she was bummed out because, you know, somebody else was going to know now that I did this, and she knew about it. And it was just weird because the whole way down there, that had me messed up in the head, wondering why she felt that way. I mean, because this is my sister, and I didn't think for a second that she would be, she'd be alarmed about that or whatever. I figured she would be fine
Yeah,
with it.
how are they going to know about that, right?
Right. So that let me know that there was probably already something in the house, either recording or the phone that I was using that was given to me from her was probably compromised or whatever. And it was weird because things had already started to happen, and as far as following, and I almost got ran over at Kroger, pushing a buggy of groceries out. This dude just stomps it, right at the little crosswalk area. And, it was just some real sketchy stuff was going on already. And this is way, a few years before, um, all the other stuff started happening. That's why I was telling you that, man, I've got this story goes so deep that, there's definitely another episode that we could do because I've been to California and back twice. Um, and there's just a whole slew of things that have happened on both trips. I mean, it's it's just nonstop stuff coming at you, and it just does not end. I mean, here I sit today, still with a mob of people around me trying to get a reaction out of me. If it ain't nothing more than blowing a horn at me to get me to turn my head, they feel like
So
they've
you
done
just
what they
feel
tried to do.
surrounded basically by that type of environment. Is that correct?
I truly am surrounded by it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I made that video about because, when it gets, you're experiencing a heavy form of harassment where you can't escape. You're traveling around. You're experiencing something that logistically wouldn't be possible, even with human collusion, in my opinion, but I could be wrong. Depending on the time frame of the tyranny that you're dealing with, it seems as though it's supernatural to me. And
Hmm.
how do you explain something like that? And you know, when it comes to survival, when it comes to just forming a type of comprehensive framework to plan the future and deal with what's going on, that's not easy to do.
Absolutely
And for
not.
you to be within the first year or two of this whole thing, I mean, it's got to be the most intense as it's ever been in your life. You know,
It is. It is, and every day is a new day to. Um, I mean, I have the closest relationship with God that I have ever had in my life, and I I think it's safe to say, really, I never knew it was possible, without turning this into a church program or anything, I didn't know that it was possible to form a relationship like I have. And um, it's so good as far as I'm concerned that I would really would go through it all over again to have formed the relationship I have with God. It's just that important to me now, and that's saying a lot because I mean, who would want to go through this again? Who would want to go from one end of the country to the other 4 times and go through all the mess and deal with all the stuff, and just to say that I got to this place with my Savior is just amazing to me. I love Him with everything I am, and every day is a new day to start out with Him, and how we're going to deal with this. We put together a plan every day, and it's just awesome. It truly is, and it makes me wonder. I know that this is a spiritual battle. Yesterday was a real good. Some things happened that proved that to me. I was sitting in the middle of a wide open Lowe's parking lot, reading a Bible and doing a little Bible study, and this guy comes pulling in a big rig, and he pulls right up to my driver's door. I would barely have been able to open the door and still get out of it. He pulled that close to my driver door.
Oh man.
And I looked up, I had to look up to even see him, in the windshield. And he was sitting there mean mugging me. And this parking lot was empty. I mean, there was about 3 or 4 cars out in the far out area where I was sitting. I mean, he had the whole parking lot to park in. And he didn't come flying up on me or anything. He just eased up on me almost at a pace that I didn't even see him approaching, until I noticed he was there. And I was like, wow. And I started reading the Bible out loud. And then a car alarm fired up, just a little ways away. And I rolled my window up. And then I started reading a little bit louder. And an ambulance come flying through the parking lot, full on lights, sirens, everything. And I just, I started laughing and talking to God. And I was just like, this is definitely the enemy coming against what I'm doing right here. It has to be. I mean, it was timed so perfect on everything that it couldn't, I mean, when I started reading out loud, the car alarm fired up instantly.
Wow.
Almost on cue. Everything was on cue. And it was like, wow, how could this be? But you know what? It was one of the best Bible studies I've ever had in my life. Even though those circumstances took place, it just lets me know that this is what it is. I believe that we are in the last days. I truly do. And, I mean, like I said, I'm not going to turn this into a church show or anything like that because some people aren't believers. But the only advice I could give you in that aspect of it is if you're not a believer, man, you might want to think about it, because I'm going to tell you what, I would hate to be going through this without God. I mean, truly, I just don't think I would have made it this far. I think that something would have already happened, and I would have probably ended up like that guy at Florida State University or one of these places where I had enough. And, I'm going to see how many of them I can get before it's all over with. And, I mean, that's a real bad way to think or even talk. But, I have God as an outlet, and to help me through it all. And like I said, everything is a learning curve. There's a learning curve to everything that I go through out here. And it's just amazing. I mean, it truly is. It sucks because It's not like the enemy eased the door open and he's creeping in. It's like he kicked the door open. I mean, it's like I was living a life this time last year. A few sketchy things were going on around me, but with pretty much normalcy. And the news was the same, always some depressing stuff. But look at everything now. I mean, it's like, gosh, this world's took a nosedive in such a short period of time. And I sense on these people that follow me in these places, sometimes I'll look at one and I really wonder if it's even a person, because there's nothing behind the eyes. They almost look as though they're hollow inside.
Yeah.
And it's weird, man. It makes you wonder if it's not an AI. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff they've got over in China and stuff. They have got some robots that are absolutely spot on. I mean, you would not be able to tell that if you was to encounter it, you wouldn't be able to tell if it was real or not. But these people are dead inside, and it's like they don't have any life, like no hope. I mean, is what the way I took it. It was like they just nothing home behind them eyes, and that's weird. That's sad.
Well, yeah. Well, you've experienced a lot in the last, just a short time. You're you're way ahead of the curve, brother. Okay, so, yeah. I mean, you see what's going on. You
Yeah,
know what's happening, and it is trying to figure out exactly how people are drawn into this, how individuals can be taken over to the point where, from your perspective, it's almost like you're dealing with robots.
it is.
Because you can see that there's something else going on. They're being manipulated. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
the whole world is full of this whole thing. And you mentioned the last days. And according to, because I've done a lot of work in prophecy and everything, but here's the intense part of what you're talking about. The last days, according to the prophet Joel and other things in the Bible, began around the time after Christ, when people at Pentecost specifically, and some fulfilled scriptures alluding to the dividing tongues of fire, which in the Pentecostal movement is pretty intense. Not that I'm endorsing that, but here's the point: is that is a reference to the dividing of the nations, and the Christ, he is coming back to take the nations back. That's a fulfillment of Psalm 82. And when you're dealing with the last days, a lot of people will make the mistake in thinking that it's now, but it began almost 2,000 years ago. But here's the exciting thing: we are almost at the end of that. Literally,
we're in
like
the
50 years away, a little less than that, actually. Literally.
Yeah.
So the very last of the last days, as you said, you're not being inaccurate.
No.
You're saying, and then you brought up the whole thing of artificial intelligence and some of the things that we're dealing with, as far as the infiltration, and it's like now you see what's happening, and you mentioned that you wouldn't want to do this without the Lord, and it's like if it took this to get you to wake up to see what is happening, then it's worth it, man. It's definitely worth it, because those people, they don't know. They're asleep. Either that, or they're just like you said, they're like robots.
Yeah. And in the book, we win. We win in the end. So we will not experience anything that he didn't when he was on earth. You know, a lot of similarities as far as the mockery, the scoffing, the lies, the stalking, the mobbing, you know, a lot of the same things happened to Jesus from his
Yeah.
own people, you know, his own kind, sold him out. And, it's, very similar. And, you know, it says that as it'll be as in the days of Noah, you know, I mean, look at how the world was in the days of Noah. You know, I mean, they were completely vile and evil and just, you know, no no care. They just you know, sexual immorality just, I mean, it just it
Everything, yeah, everything was completely flipped around.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's similar now. You know, I mean, look at this world. And here, this Epstein thing, it has just been a big, you know, big explosion. And look at all the names that have come out that are just sitting back looking and laughing at all this. And, you know, I seen a thing on there earlier on the news where that one chick from Washington, I can't remember, she busted some some pedophiles or something, and you know, was showing on there where they had a roundup of some sex offenders or something like that. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how can you even go parading that in right now when, you know, all these people just got busted for it, or implicated in a big sting ring of that, and they're sitting back, you know, nothing's happening to them and nothing will, because
Yeah.
because of their position in society. You know, they're, you know, it's just crazy, man.
No,
But
they do. You hit on something, and a lot of people have been asking me about the Epstein. Is like, how come you're not talking about it? And I could. I mean, you know, when you get into Operation, you know, Midnight Climax and MK Ultra, there was sex kitten operations. But the thing is, you have to understand that these are blackmail operations. These are not set up without a motive. That thing is worth, I mean, you want to talk about the most valuable assets in the world right now. The elite caught on an island, you know, within the legal framework of pedophilia. That's
mhm,
worth more money than you can. And so people are wondering, why are these things redacted? Because it's worth a lot of money and a lot of power. Okay, and they've set it up that way, right?
yeah,
And when you get into the secret societies and so on and so forth, it's all there. And but you're right. And so you can see it even when you get into some of the things that are coming out now, whether people speculate that it's a, you know, a type of methodology to make it look ridiculous with satanic rituals and all these things. I don't know. But when you get into the framework of looking at, you know, the hierarchy, which of course we've talked about, down from the spiritual handlers into the elite and into these, you know, lineages and everything, it seems pretty consistent, that it's not just some type of joke. This it's almost like, you know, it's like what you're talking about, with witchcraft and with individuals who are, you know, recruited and become
mhm.
slaves to this system. You know,
It's nuts, man. It's so it's mind-boggling to me as to how fast everything has
how can
just,
people deny it at this point? Right?
mhm, yeah.
Yeah.
And the world has took a nosedive. I mean, just so quick. It's not. It seems like in just the last year, this world's gotten filthy. I mean,
Oh yeah.
in just a year's time, you know. And you know, um, got Trump in there, and everybody was like, "Heck yeah!" You know, now the economy's going to come back, and blah blah blah, this that and the other. And look at the nosedive the world has taken. It's just amazing. And I seen that where North Korea's uh, interjecting all that stuff about Israel now. And did you have you seen that? that just blew me away that he's sticking his nose in that and saying that, that they're barbaric and all this, and he's
Right. Well, here's the thing about it. Okay. A lot of people, and I'm not trying to hijack this, but a
uh-huh.
lot of people do not understand who the Hebrews are. And that's unfortunate because you have to really do your homework. And so when you
Mhm.
look back, when Jesus was talking and he said, you're the synagogue of Satan to the Pharisees, why did he say that? Well, he said it very specifically because they obfuscated the prophecies of his coming. And when you go back to the Babylonian exile, the Pharisees and the Sadducees broke off not only from the prophecies and the inherited scriptures that they had, they went into the lunar calendar system. Okay, so when Jesus said, "You missed the time of your visitation," he was being very specific. Okay, John the Baptist was in a scene. You had the Pharisees, you had the Sadducees, you had the Essenes. Okay,
Right.
even when you get into Daniel and what he did, and the wise men that came to visit Jesus when he was a little baby, they didn't miss it. Why? Because they knew. What did they know? When the Pharisees and the Sadducees went into the oral Torah and they broke away to the lunar calendar system in Babylon, which was the beginning of the judgment prophesied by Jeremiah. And he
Uh-huh.
said, you guys are going to be scattered. And a lot of preachers will use that and they'll say, you have a future and a hope. And they'll talk to Christians nowadays, but they don't understand what Jeremiah was talking about. What was he talking about? He was talking about the Jews.
Mhm.
They were going to be scattered and judged, and they went through the Deuteronomy covenant, and they were judged, and they even got into child sacrifice, just like the stuff we're looking at with maybe even the
Right.
Epstein files. But the thing is, God had prophesied that whole thing. Let me give you an example. So if you look at the destruction of the temple in 586, and you look at the individuals bringing up sacrifices to the high places in 583, but you look at the calendar. The calendar is the 70 weeks of Daniel. And so when you look at this landscape, a lot of people will focus on a 7-year tribulation period. Well, that's not really biblical. The final 7 years is a final Shemitah of a jubilee that began about a year or two ago. Okay, in that final 7-year period, the world is going to go into a great, final time of tribulation, which are the last 3.5 years are going to be that great tribulation that Jesus talked about in Matthew 24. But the thing is that even when you get into Revelations and it talks about the dragon pouring out water and going after the woman that gave birth to the child, well, that's the Jews. Right. That's when you get into the whole concept of election. People will take that and say, are you elect? Are you chosen? No. They were chosen and elected to bring forth the Christ. So the obfuscation of those prophecies by the Pharisees and the Sadducees that began in the Babylonian exile. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. So they adopted a lunar calendar. That's a 360-day year calendar. Okay, what did Jesus mean when he said you missed time for your visitation? Do the math.
They missed the
Okay,
day.
think about this. Okay, so the 70 weeks of Daniel represent 490 years of disobedience of the Israelites under the Deuteronomy covenant.
Okay.
490 years minus 7 years, the final week of Daniel is 483. You take 483 lunar calendar years, 360 days, and you multiply that times 0.9857. Okay, you're going to have a different number. And then we have the decree that went out in 444. What do you have? 32 AD. They should have known, literally. They should have known if they wouldn't have adopted the lunar calendar and changed the times and seasons as the Pharisees and the Sadducees did, they would have known exactly when Jesus was coming. Amazing, isn't it? Oh, I got more than that. Okay.
Oh,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, boy. I got more than that. And so that's the thing, is that people don't understand this whole thing. And you can see all of it through that lens.
Yeah,
You
I
can see
see.
the abomination of desolation. And if you understand the true meaning of Armageddon, which is not Armageddon, it's Harmageddon, which is actually Harmoge, which is actually the Mount of Assembly, which is what? The Temple Mount, the cosmic geography of the temple. And so you can see all these things happening. But let me show you something else. So
the Muslims got the temple right now. They're on the Temple Mount right now, aren't they?
That's okay. Now you're starting to catch on.
Yeah.
Now you see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you figured it out. Let me show you how to figure it out mathematically. What did they say about, what did the angel tell Daniel? He said 1,290 days, years. After the sacrifice ceases, the abomination of desolation will be set up. What did he mean? Do the calculation. 1,290 days, years times 0.9857 equals 688 AD. Okay, what happened in 688 AD on the Temple Mount? That was the construction time of the mosque up there, right on it. That's the middle point. That's the middle point from 685 to 691. Is that a coincidence? No, it's not. Let me show you something else. Okay, so if you go back, like I said, the temple was destroyed in 586, and they brought sacrifices up in 583, which gives us 688 AD. Well, let's look at what happened when the decree went out in 538 for them to return, because we're in this Second Temple era, the return to the Holy Land. Okay, but what was the problem? Because remember, you're counting down when it comes to the calendar. I said, well, they lived there for 70 years, right? From what? The word came down from Jeremiah in 605, and they left in 536. Because why? Because the decree went out in 538 for them to return to the Holy Land, but they lived there for 70 years, right? That's 70 years. And so they had to sell their businesses. They had to take a 1,000-mile journey. And so they didn't leave. They didn't get back until 536. Do the math on that one. What do you have? Well, if you have 360, which is the lunar calendar, times 7. Now, this is the mystery of Revelation, by the way. What do you get? You get 2,520 years. But if you convert that, you get 2,484 years minus 536. What is that? That's 1948.
Wow.
Oh yeah. That's the fig tree, brother. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then Jeremiah said, you have a future and a hope, like I said before. And guess what? There they are. Wow. You want to get into a debate with someone concerning the reality of the God of Israel, you don't go into intelligent design. You just do what I just did. Okay. There's no way. It's not possible for it to be any other thing. And, the sad thing is a lot of targets have experienced gang stalking at church. And I talked about that, where, people get attacked and they think that God is after them or whatever, or they fall into the bait trap, not understanding the Noah's Ark situation or the fossil record, which you can create fossils in a lab in a very short period of time with mineralization. You have a global flood or even a localized flood, you're going to have mineral-rich sediment along with aquifers of the deep breaking forward, creating fossils in a record amount of time, along with, cementing and all kinds of rock layers and everything else. That's through catastrophic interpretation. But for them, they think it's evolution. And then when they get hit with these charlatans and all these spiritual handlers in the church, they just deconstruct from Christianity. Because they're bewitched by that whole thing. And it's just like the stuff that targets deal with. And so like you said, this is the last days of the last days. Yeah. And according to the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, we got, maybe around 2075 before that, or maybe a little after that. We don't know.
Yeah.
because the Lord said that you're not going to know the day or the hour, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's very
Um,
interesting. Yeah,
it's definitely, I believe we're in the last seconds of the last days for sure. I do.
yeah. I
And
think
it's,
the Lord could return very quickly. Within
sure.
our lifetime. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Within our lifetime. And I was telling somebody, last week, I, got jammed up at a gas station, and I got this guy to answer the phone, and he's a Christian. We got to talking about God and stuff. And I was telling him, I truly think that, that there's a good chance that we'll see it in our lifetime. And I remember as a little boy going to church with my grandmother and always hearing her talking about God coming back, and you know, we don't know the time, but it's coming soon, because look at the way the stuff is on the news. And I mean, we're talking like back in the 80s,
Yeah.
and stuff. And she would always point out this on the news, and this never happened before. And but now look at it, and seeing, and it's just
Yeah, you can't argue with what's going on now. It's like drag queen story hour. It's like, what the hell is going on?
yeah, and it's like, it's not like Satan is even, he's not even creeping in anymore. He kicked the door open,
Yeah.
and
It's just like you
and
said,
it's
it's
just,
72 genders. Boom. Like
yeah.
what? What? Wait a minute now. Yeah.
It's nuts, man.
Yeah.
And like that post I put on Facebook, you got to really be careful, because look at who all is using God now. Everybody's claiming God and Jesus
Yeah.
and their stuff. But, I mean, Eminem's got a Christian album out. All of these, Adele, all of these big stars, putting out stuff, Snoop Dogg, and all these people putting out stuff about God, and don't live a life, a Christian life in the least bit. But singing songs about God and stuff like that, just to get the approval and the trust of people. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. I mean, they're definitely what we have to watch out for in the last days. We were given that, to look out for. I've been followed in church. I went to, a church in Oregon, that I listened to on YouTube all the time when I was out west, the first time. I drove up there just to go to this church because, the pastor's really good, and it's a non-denominational, and it's just really, really good. I wanted to meet the pastor and go in, and they followed me in there. I stood on the same aisle, that I was on. And I mean, you could tell the girl wasn't there for church. She was not even facing the stage area. She was facing me. And I mean, it made me feel uncomfortable. But I mean, I finally, I just said a prayer, and then I just continued, worshiping the Lord out what I was there to do, because it was a little uncomfortable at first. It was like, man, this is weird being stared at, while I'm I'm trying to enter into worship. And finally I just said, to heck with it. But God, God is awesome, man. And I just cannot wait. And like I was saying earlier, we win in the end. And that is so, so awesome. It's horrible to see the world in the shape that it's in, and it's only going to continue to decay and get worse. And it sucks to see that, but it's just all fulfillment of the Bible. It's coming to pass right before our very eyes. And
Yeah. And, until the Lord returns, it's like a lot of targets will ask me if, this is going to gain awareness or whatever. And it might. I'm not saying that it can't. And I can't imagine that God would not give them peace and a type of refreshing within their scenario. But as a target who's been doing this for well over 30 years, that's not really what we're looking for. It's like when people in society are looking for a leader, some type of Messiah. There's only one Messiah, that's Christ.
That's
And
it.
unfortunately, in this world, they're all going to be part of the system. You know what I mean? So that's really what we're looking at with the Epstein files or whatever. We have, a lot of people that were thinking Trump was going to save the world, but what's the Bible say? Okay, and I'm not against Trump. I like him. Okay, but he's just a man. That's all he is.
That's
Okay, and he's not necessarily a very spiritually educated individual. Okay, so what do we need? Well, we need a complete framework flip. We need Christ to come back, and like I said, within Psalm 82, that is the judgment against the principalities of the world. And when Jesus sent out the 72, a lot of people don't understand that they represented the 72 or the 70 nations, depending on whether you're looking at the Masoretic or the Septuagint. And a lot of people don't understand what he was doing, because people will reference, treading on snakes and scorpions and how we're going to go after demons. But Jesus was making a point. And when he showed up, they knew what was happening. And that's when the Gadarene, the demoniac, when he left the territory of the Hebrews and he showed up, and then, that legion that confronted him, they said, "We know who you are, and don't send us to the abyss. Don't send us into Tartarus before our time." And he had mercy on them and let them go into the swine and so on and so forth. Why? Because they knew he was coming. They just didn't know what was going on. And when he sent out the 72, he even rebuked them, and they came back and they said, even the spirits and the demons were subject to us. And he said, "Do not rejoice that the spirits are subject to you. Rather rejoice that your names are written in
the
heaven."
Lamb's Book of Life.
Yeah, in the Lamb's Book of Life. And so, but they didn't catch on, and then it went further that he saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning, and they walked away. Well, what did they represent? And later, they probably had the opportunity to understand what happened, because there were even people who were resurrected along with Jesus who went around for a time period. Imagine your grandpa coming back to your house after Jesus was resurrected. Literally, that had 500 people, I think is what it was, came with him.
Yeah. At Pentecost?
Yeah. No, that was before Pentecost. Pentecost was when I referenced the dividing tongues of fire that came down when the Holy Spirit happened in Acts. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But that represented Psalm 82 too, because why? Because that language is the divided tongues of fire is also referencing the divided nations, because you have to remember that at the Tower of Babel, God disinherited the world. That was after the flood, by the way. And what did he do? He assigned mankind over to taskmasters, over to these principalities until that time. And of course, they were judged in Psalm 82. The whole theory is, maybe I'm wrong, and Dr. Michael Heiser is the one that kind of pioneered this whole thing, and I got those videos in the playlist, is that they were being judged. But the point is that at the time of the fall of Adam, the world, or Zion, was handed over to Lucifer and his angels. That was the whole point of the Garden of Eden. That was the whole point of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It wasn't just sin. It was about an alignment with the rebellion. And if I've got that video in the playlist as well, if you want to watch the book of Melchizedek. But the thing is people don't get it. And so, what you the divided tongues of fire it's almost like a renewing of that process, where when the Holy Spirit came and there was divided tongues of fire, it was like a regathering of that whole thing. and a renewing not only of mankind but of creation itself.
Because each man knew his own tongue, didn't he? It was like
That's
it was
correct.
it
Yeah,
was jumbled, but
it was prophesied.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
hmm
That's when it
yeah,
says in
the
those latter
interpretation.
times that the men will dream dreams and so on and so forth, and they will speak to him in stammering speech. And so that was the fulfillment
Hmm.
right there. Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Oh man, I got chills.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to watch those that video. Um,
Yeah. Well, the thing is, a lot of people argue about the book of Melchizedek, and it talks about a type of government based on the knowledge of evil that was really the heart of the rebellion, not only of the angelic realm, but of mankind later. But Adam was warned about that whole thing. People will argue
mhm.
about that, whatever. But
Yeah.
even when you go beyond, when you look into the more explicit version of Cain and Abel, because it goes into in-depth detail on that's interesting. I don't know. People can think whatever they want, but anyway,
Hmm.
the whole thing is on audio in the playlist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be good. That'll be definitely be on my to-do list.
And we're gonna do another video with you, but would you like to add something else before we go?
Not not really as far as we've touched on a lot of different topics and everything. But mainly the honeypot thing in the beginning. I I would just be very mindful and careful with to any TIs out there that are listening to this or that are just figuring out that some of these similarities are going on in your life. Be very careful because they come in real subtly and they don't let you they don't let you know right off the rip and and then and then they do. you know
Right.
so be very careful in the beginning and pay close
Well, you,
attention to
you
what's
almost
going
have
on.
to try to be independent if possible, because
Yeah,
you just, it seems like everybody ends up screwing you over, you know?
yeah. And I was a couple exits up the interstate a little while ago, and I pulled in. I finally got tired of the the chaos. I mean, I brought so much business to Walmart at that Walmart that I was at earlier. I should get a kickback off of it. I finally got tired of the fishbowl thing, and I left. And I pulled in this gas station, and this girl comes walking up, and she was like, "Could you spare a couple dollars for gas?" And I said, "Man, I was about to ask you the same thing." And she's like, "Huh?" And I was like, "No, I'm just kidding." I was like, "But I really don't have much money." I was like, "Let me dig around here and see how much change I got her, like right almost $2 and change out of the console and stuff." And I give it to her, and she started talking, and well, I had a boyfriend and he's in jail now and all. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was
No.
like, I said, "You ever heard of Ti?" And she said, "Huh?" I was like, I said, "You ever heard of a targeted individual?" And she's like, "No." And I was like, "Well, you don't want to hear about one either." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "You probably don't want to be over here talking to me. It wouldn't be good for you." And she just walked away. But I sensed that I had a boyfriend, but he's in jail, and kind of easing the door open. And I was like, mm-mm. I would
Yeah.
way rather be on my own right now and not have that added uh because there's just a few people that I know that I even talk to that have females in their lives. Two of them, um, their wives are both against them, you know, and they're living in a relationship, an active relationship with children in the home, and their wives are on the other side. And I could not even believe. I mean, I couldn't even begin to want to deal with something like that. You know, that has got to be chaotic to, you know, to have children involved and be torn like that in this program. I mean, that's got
Yeah,
to be that's sad. I pray for them. I truly do. And
absolutely. Though, you know, when it goes that far, and you know, a lot of targets will talk about the long con, and I've experienced it, and it's like, man, really? You know, you're gonna set me up for this long just to stick the knife in? You know, really?
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah, that's horrible, man.
yeah.
But yeah, I look forward to doing another interview with you. It's I've enjoyed this. I I'm glad I finally got to meet you. I watch your show regularly. You're one of the only ones I've cut way back on my gang stalking videos and stuff. I think it's I think it's something that we can get too much of, you know. And I'm not saying that to you know to hurt your ratings or anybody's ratings, but I believe that you know if we think on something uh, so strongly, and that's you know what we do, then I believe that we can even manifest it in our own life if we think so hard on stuff, then we'll start seeing some of that stuff coming into our own life. And I'm only saying that from experience in my own situation because you know I mean I went from one guy to the next just watching because I was trying to get educated. You know, when I found out about it, I wanted to know everything there was to know about it. You know, and then I got duped by a couple people that said they were TIs and ended up going to town with them, and they were doing flipping their hair and rubbing their nose and tugging on their earlobe and all this stuff, and run off and left me. And you know, I mean, I was like, that's just not right, you know. And it's just, I don't know. I think that it's this is just a wild, wild deal for
Well, yeah.
real.
Well, you know, the thing is, you know, the reality for targets is you're isolated and you deal with
Mhm.
this, and so you know, the natural reaction for anybody is like, I got to talk about this, or I got to get some kind of affirmation because this stuff is just driving me crazy, and everybody around me is thinking that I'm the freak. And
Uh-huh.
so you get onto whatever channel, maybe my channel or someone else's channel, and the danger is you could be dealing with disinformation, or you could be dealing with the perps out there trying to pretend like they're TIs. And I talked about that. You don't want to give anybody personal information. And so,
Mhm.
but it is useful. But like you said, if you focus on it constantly, that plays into the program. It plays into the sensitization. It plays in to that mental obsession to where now you can be gaslighted into the point where it's like your problem, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
you're setting a narrative to for your own life
yeah,
by the things you're focusing on and obsessing over.
yeah.
And
Now
you
they
know,
try to blame shift the whole thing, gaslight you. Exactly.
and that's why I was glad when I found you. You know, because you just popped up one day on my YouTube feed. I had never heard of you or seen you before, and when I seen you and listened to the first one, it was a current interview that you were doing, the first one that I ever seen. It wasn't an old one or nothing. And I was like, cool, I'm glad I found you. And then I started watching some of your old ones and stuff. And I was like, I'm really glad I found you because you cover things that are need to know for us out here, you know. And it was very beneficial to me to find your channel. And anybody listening, I would recommend that they go back and look at some of your older stuff too, because there's a lot to be learned in a bunch of your videos and interviews. And you know, I was very glad to find yours and weed it out, but don't get too don't get too overcome by all the because there's so much stuff out there that's just out there for ratings. All they want is all it is just clickbait, you know. And now that AI's come out with all this stuff where they'll do these real cool layouts for their videos. I mean, go on YouTube now and look at all these fancy schmancy things that they got on there with dragons and all this wild stuff, uh, to draw people in to watch their videos,
Right.
and it's you really want the truth in this. You don't want a bunch of mumbo jumbo, because it's bad for your health.
No, you're right, because that's part of the deception, because like I've said before, targets are taken into a place of propositional tyranny, through environmental stimuli and subjection. And that's part of the whole invasion into your mind. And so they'll play on that need, like you said, you need affirmation, you're looking for solutions, whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll make this extravagant video, but they'll have the seeds of deception in there. They'll have that wrong focus, or something in there that's going to lead you into that criteria of persecutory delusion or delusion of grandeur, where you think you're chosen or some other thing. And it's not to say it's not to say that targets can't be persecuted because of their faith, but to create a soteriological platform to where, by you experiencing gang stalking or harassment, that you're somehow selected by God. Well, it usually happens the opposite. Usually you make the decision to believe, that's what the Bible says, that it pleased God to save them which believed and draw near to him. And then, they're going to come after you then. Right.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Satan's not after somebody that's not
right.
That's not making a dent in his in his entourage. He wants the ones that are making a difference. And I just man, it really, really is crazy. But that's even the way the Antichrist will come. He'll come with peace. He's gonna make everybody think that he's this, but he's gonna have that, and he's gonna have the but just like you said, they'll have some good stuff on there and beneficial to you, but then there'll be just that
they'll flip, right?
Exactly.
No, you described it perfectly. It's a complete flip at that point. Exactly. Just like you, when the girl said, "Oh, come on, I'm your friend," and then flip, right? Just flipped on you. The Antichrist is going to do the same thing. Exactly.
Yeah, he sure is.
Yeah, he's going to bring peace in the Middle East, right up there on the Temple Mount. It's all going to be good. Bring them, Muslims and the Jews together, and it's flip.
Yep.
Flip. Yeah.
Yeah. That's going to be crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
We might even see it.
Well, that's the thing. When you look at, even the dream of Nebuchadnezzar interpreted by the prophet Daniel, and you have the head of gold, which represents the kingdom after the first two, which were ancient Egypt and Assyria. Even when you get into the secret societies, that all began after the Tower of Babel. When you get into Freemasonry or whatever, that started in ancient Egypt. Then you have ancient Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, right? That's the head of gold, and it moves down to the feet of iron and clay, right? So Babylon, and then you get down to the feet of iron and clay, which after Rome is what? Well, that'd be the Ottoman Empire. And so that's the caliphate, right? So, but it's like, people don't understand what they're looking. You can get a map and you can look at it. You can Google it. You can say, let's look at the Empire of Rome. Let's look at the Empire of the Medo-Persia, Greece, so on and so forth. It's right around there. Yeah. And then when you look at what's going on over there, it's the same thing. But it's after 1948. I mean, how much you can count down however you want. How many years do you want to count down? A lot of people try to figure it out. But the thing is that, there's a lot of different ways to explain the word generation. And even when you get into some of the ancient pictograph, you have the head of a man moving through a tent which is a generation which involves a people. So you have two different definitions. One is a lineage that goes all the way back, and the other is a generation which spans a time period. So both of it lines up.
Mm-hmm.
You just got
Yeah.
to see the prophecy. That's it. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. But the point is, for targets out there, it's like you said, you have to hope in God. The thing that a lot of targets are, and for what I've experienced and a lot of other targets I've talked to, is that it just seems like you get marginalized and minimized, and nobody believes you anymore. They all think you're crazy, and you just don't know if it's ever going to stop, and you think that you're just going to fade out. But I don't believe that. But it does seem like that. And I think that we all have that hope, not only of God's justice, but that, this stuff it's going to be made known. The stuff that you dealt with is going to be laid out in the light on the table. There's not going to be, this, I don't know, I wasn't saying that about you, or everybody's going to know what happened. And a lot of targets are dealing with that type of tyranny to where things are being set up, or they're being, sabotaged or whatever, but it's going to be made known eventually. And that's what you have to remember that. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer in seed time and harvest. You do reap what you sow. Regardless of what you're doing, you're planting seeds, whether it be good or bad. And, I think you'll reap what you sow in life, period. And I believe that there'll be light shined on it. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm not one of these that get involved in all the forms and send into Washington and all that stuff. I just try to live my life and try to follow God's will for my life each day, and stay on top of my repentance and keep a clear line of communication. And each day is another adventure, and I do believe you're right, though. I even heard earlier today that even the Epstein file thing, not to keep going back to that, but was kicked the door open on a bunch of the targeting stuff, from what was going on to other people, through that, where they were being, there was people being targeted and all different kinds of stuff, and some of the files, there was millions of pages of that stuff, and we're going to continue to be hearing new stuff about it for probably for years, really. But it's just a mess. But yeah, I believe that you're right. I believe that there'll be light shined on it eventually. I just don't know how it'll all unfold and take place, but it's crazy. It is a
absolutely
crazy mess out here.
Would you have anything else to say before we end the recording?
No, just enjoyed it. I'm glad I got to meet you, and I look forward to doing the next one and seeing where it goes. We got, I got a lot of stuff I can tell you about, the ins and outs of traveling around and just, this different stuff I've had to encounter and go through. It's just been a mess. It's just a circus, really, everywhere I go. I know Barnum and Bailey, I think they retired and all that, but I think it's
yeah. No, that's good, because a lot of targets, they for me, I didn't realize the extent of this whole thing until I left my geographical area and went out to California, similar to what you're talking about, and it was there. I was doing a job traveling around as a central office tech for Nortel, putting in OC 192s, and I was like, this is just, there's no way. And then I really had to wake up to the spiritual reality of this whole thing, at least for me, Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to add this upon closing here. Just any TIs listening to this, be very, very, very careful and who you trust, because there, and it goes deep too. Um, there are so many people scouring the social media and YouTube and these different platforms looking for people that they can exploit and do damage to from the comfort of their own living room couch. And they don't even have to get out and do a thing. They can sit right on their couch with a tablet or a phone in their lap, and they can make you feel like an absolute, like you have just really been manipulated and done wrong. I've had it done to me, and on numerous occasions now. And these people are good, very good at what they do. They know everything to say. They know, just how to get you hook, line, and sinker. I mean, swallow the bait, and then they got you. And it's all about reactions, and it's sick. It's really really sick. But be very careful in who you trust, man, and don't tell your story to everybody. Just be very selective on who you trust with your story and your information, because they're really really lurking in the shadows to
Well,
steal,
yeah,
kill, and
that's
destroy.
why I tell people, if you want to promote this from your channel, you want to tell people who you are, fine, do whatever you want. But I'm not going to do that because I know there are people hunting targets, just like you said.
Sure. Hmm.
And you got to you have to be careful, because then the other problem is you get false positives, right?
Yeah.
Because I've heard of
Yep.
targets, they're like, well, I went and told these people all about it, and then I'm like, well, how do you know that they're not going to mess with you a little bit because they think you're paranoid, right?
Hmm.
They,
Yeah.
they get cantankerous or something, and I've seen that, and it's like, well, yeah, it's like you said, if and think about it this way: not only do you have to be careful, but you have to be tactful. If it's when I started dealing with this, I had already dealt with gaslighting in my family before that, so I didn't say a word, and they tell on
Hmm.
themselves. They'll start
Yeah.
asking you questions, or they'll start acting weird, or trying to draw you into conversations, and you just play dumb, and then it becomes obvious. You don't even have to do anything. Or like this other target said, if you're a creature of habit, they'll start setting stuff up, and that's true. But you can also use it to your advantage to see who's involved. You know,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah. So you got
Yeah.
to be
If you'll
smart
just
about
be,
this whole thing.
yeah, like you said, be tactful, sure. And
Yeah.
and I had a guy just last week, and this guy, I mean, he is spot on sharp. He uses words that I've never even heard before. And, he knows the stuff, the the real crazy side of it, the real deep side of it, that a lot of it I don't even know about, and I'm learning more now that I have found Sabrina Walker. She's amazing. But I've just started learning some of the deep part of the stuff. But this guy was good, and I just kind of when I kind of got a bad feeling about him in my spirit, I kind of got quiet and reserved a little bit. And like you said, he told on himself. I mean, he showed me that he uh, wasn't who he really was saying he was. Just
Yeah.
by some of the comments that he made was just you know what I needed to hear to know that he wasn't. He was about um, my story. He was just really trying to get information out of me, and they hide in some unexpected places too. Not to mention any names of other things, but
Right. I
yeah, be
got you. Other
very
channels
careful.
or other names. Right.
Yeah. Hmm. And
Yeah.
you think they're there to help you, but be very careful for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Don't give out information. And even when you see some of those targets that look like they're looking for help and they're playing dumb, That's a decoy right there. You got to be careful. You do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Patrick.
sure.
I'm looking forward to your next interview because you do have, even though it's just been a couple of years or whatever, you got a lot of stuff that you figured out. You're way ahead of the curve, and fortunately, you have access to information that when I started dealing with this stuff, I had there was nothing out there, and it took me a long time, and I was way behind you. For you, you're like where I was 15 years into it, man. So you're
Yeah.
doing real good, bro. Seriously, you're doing real good. Okay.
You probably didn't have the channels with other people's testimonies and life
Nothing, man.
experiences.
Nothing.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
all the way back to '93. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there wasn't even no YouTube back then.
No, there was nothing out there. I didn't know what was going on, and I was
Mhm.
surrounded by all these people, pulling all these little games, and I even had people, walking around my yard talking about this, pointing at my, roof and talking about the signal coming from there, and old people and these other individuals, driving around and talking about witchcraft and there was no uh, information concerning directed energy weapons or any of this stuff, and
Wow.
you don't know. I mean, because it's mixed together. It's like I've
Yeah.
talked about before. You have technology mixed with the spiritual dimension. That's really where it comes from. And it does cause a divide, unfortunately, in the community, but it doesn't have to. And I've talked about
Yeah.
that all the technology we have comes from there. It's like a reflection. That's it. And so the
Mhm.
elites, the programs, even though they might not know what's going on, they're being handled. They're being manipulated too, even MK Ultra and other things. And so there doesn't really need to be a split. There's tech, there's spiritual stuff, and witchcraft is a lot more than just hocus pocus and bat wings and witches brew and all that stuff. There are people
Mhm.
involved in it. Even when you get into the Epstein stuff, you see some weird stuff there. And I haven't even had a chance to go into all of it. But so I'm looking forward to the next interview with you. And don't hang up. It might stop, and I'll get a hold of you after this. Is there
Okay.
anything else you'd like to say before we stop the recording?
No, no, good interview. I think it went good. Good luck to everybody out there. Definitely, definitely be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this right now.
Okay.